And that is why we need more than just understanding. We need acceptance. But the question is, how do we do it? How do we have acceptance on things, right? There are 3 gifts of imperfection from this book. If you read this book, there are 3 gifts of imperfection. And today we're going to dig deeper into the specific actionables that you can practice later on. So according to the book, right, practicing courage, compassion, connection in our daily lives, right, is how we cultivate worthiness. Question is this: what are the 2 keywords in this sentence? Bella say worthiness. Ivan say practicing. Shannon say practicing, cultivating. Yes, we got the first word right, which is practicing. The second word is actually daily. Okay, so what do I mean? Practicing, it means doing it, right? It means doing courage, compassion, and connection. It's not something that you have. So the first thing is on courage, right? The author says cultivating your worthiness requires courage. And the challenge is, right, the only thing is that you can only learn courage through courageous act, right? If you learn courage by couraging. I want you to think about one thing. Can you share with me one thing, right, that you wish you had the courage to do? So as I have all these things listed out, right, I want you to think about, don't have to answer me, I want you to think about how do you feel about these things, right, that, you wish you had the courage to do. Do you have fear when you think about these things? Right? I just want you to realize one point. Do you realize one thing? You cannot be courageous without being fearful, right? It comes in a package. The only time you can be courageous is when you are fearful. So couraging, right, it means, right, taking courageous acts in spite of fear. So that's the way you learn courage. Having courage doesn't mean you are fearless, right? Having courage means you still take action in spite of the fear that you have. And in this book, the author says something, right? There are many ways that you can practice courage. According to the author, she says that speaking honestly and openly about who you are takes courage. Right? Speaking about what you're feeling and what you experience, good or bad, it takes courage. It's the definition of courage. So practicing courage on a daily basis doesn't mean you need to go and do skydiving every day. Doesn't mean that you need to play roller coaster every day. It means that it can be as simple as challenging yourself to reach out for help, right? Maybe asking for referrals, right? Do you have the courage to say, hey bro, I really need your help, right? Do you have the courage to reach out to people, right? To have a conversation. Practicing courage also can be as simple as, speaking to someone honestly about what you're feeling. Recently been facing some difficulties with, right, filling the blanks. Because if you're able to do that, you will realize one thing: you will be able to connect better and build more meaningful relationship. Because practicing courage is all about putting your vulnerability on the line, and you realize that you connect with others through your vulnerabilities, not your perfect facade. You connect better with others through your vulnerability, not your perfect facade. So I hope you all caught something from the first part over here about courage. The second part about courage is this, right? Is practicing courage can be as simple as taking risk of being disappointed. Okay, practicing courage, right, can be as simple as taking risk of being disappointed. So one thing that I notice many of you, right, is that you tend to, when you are setting goals, right, you tend to downplay your expectation to avoid disappointment. Yes, how many of you know of someone like that? Right, when I say this, you downplay expectation to avoid disappointment. If you know, just give a nod. Yes, I can see your face. It could be, for example, right, something that you really, really, really want it to happen, right? It could be waiting for a reply from a big case of waiting for a reply to a big case from a customer, right? Or waiting for test results from an exam, right? Instead of pretending that it doesn't matter to you, you can actually be true to yourself that you were excited about the possibility. So I just want to point out one point the author says over here, right? Playing down exciting stuff doesn't take away the pain when it doesn't happen, but it minimizes the joy when it does happen. So stop playing down expectation, be truthful and honest about what you really want for yourself. So I'm going to cover a little bit more on compassion now, right? It's the same for compassion as well, right? Actions creates feeling. It's same for practicing compassion. But at the heart of compassion, right, is really acceptance. So if we want to have more compassion in our lives, we need to start, accepting others. We need to start being compassionate towards ourselves and others. The point is this, right? The better we are at accepting ourselves or others, the more compassionate we become, right? The better we are at accepting ourselves or others, the more compassionate we become. The problem comes when there is a lack of acceptance. The problem comes when there's a lack of acceptance. So what do I mean? The lack of acceptance is this, write this down, right? The lack of acceptance comes from the fear of being fully known and not fully loved. Okay, I repeat again, the lack of acceptance comes from the fear of being fully known and not fully loved. And that means that, if you really know the real me, you wouldn't love me anymore. If you really know the real me, you wouldn't love me anymore. That's the real feel. But if you think about it, what's the opposite of that? What's acceptance now? Acceptance is, I fully know you and I still fully love you. Okay, I keep it simple now, huh? This is not something you can Google on. Acceptance is, I fully know you and I still fully love you. So think about it, right? Why don't you dare to tell people what you do? Right? Because they're afraid. Once you're fully known, you don't think you'll be fully loved. Right? And if you think about that, whose love do you need first? Self or others? Self, right? So that is why acceptance is essentially self-love. Okay, I was reading this and it was not easy to break it down. I just wanted to make it simple so all of you can understand, right? Which is, acceptance is essentially self-love. If you want to be able to accept yourself, it starts from knowing yourself, it starts from loving yourself first, so that your worthiness comes from within and not dependent on others or external factors. Does that make sense? Question is, right, why is acceptance so hard? It sounds easier said than done, right? But why is it so hard? It is hard because we are not kind to ourselves. It is hard because we start to blame and shame ourselves whenever things doesn't work out. So the question that the author asked, right, is, wouldn't it be better if we could be kinder but firmer with ourselves? What does this mean? Wouldn't it be better if we could be kinder but firmer with ourselves? The reason why you may not be producing results is because you don't accept that your job requires two things. Number one, we need to be firmer with ourselves, which means that whatever we need to do, we do it first. But number two, if it's not done well, I can be kind with myself. I will forgive myself today, and tomorrow I will go on to be firmer. But the problem is this: if we are not kinder, it's very hard to be firmer. So let me explain to you what this means. Okay, one of the reasons why a lot of people give up, whenever they set themselves a new lifestyle change, maybe it could be working out. One of the reasons why they give up is because they are either too rigid or too flexible. Can I repeat it again? It's either they are too rigid or they're too flexible. So for example, some people will say, right, I'm going to work out at 7 a.m. every day, no matter what. You know what happened? One day something happened and they couldn't make it, they couldn't fulfill it, right? And they're more likely to then say, shit, 7 a.m. workout plan really doesn't work out for me. And then they give up. Does that happen to you before, or do you know of someone who is like that? But equally, right, if you think about it, if you're too flexible, they will say, right, I will work out when I feel like working out. I will work out when I have the time. Then other things take priority because it's not urgent. So being firmer, kinder and firmer, right, it means, mixing these two things together. So if you can set, for example, if you can set yourself a non-negotiable, it could be like something like, I will work out 20 minutes every day. You set yourself a time, but the time is flexible. So if you cannot work out at say 7 a.m. that day, you will have to fit that workout session somewhere else in your day, right? But the workout for 20 minutes is non-negotiable. Does that make sense? So that is why if you really want to practice compassion, we need to start being kinder and firmer with ourselves, which means less rigid, less flexibility, right? And if you can practice that, it will be a lot easier for you to practice compassion towards yourself and towards others, right? Because if you start making very extreme changes, I'm going to tell you it's not going to be sustainable, right? So start from this smaller incremental change first, and then you will see the change comes easier. The other thing that I want to talk about compassion is that how you can embrace compassion is, number one, not to fall in love with your own ideas. People tend to fall in love with their own ideas, right? And start doubting or start blaming themselves when the ideas don't work out, right? It could be for their business or their personal life. So if you think about it, if actions creates feelings, you should be asking more, you should be learning more, you should be doing so much more, right? That you end up killing your best ideas from time to time because you come to a certain realization, right? Because you need to understand this, right? The reality of fact is people don't respect the ideas you love, but rather the ideas that work. So in order for you to practice compassion, start, looking for people who can see better than you. Ask them, blindly follow them first. The keyword is first, right? Take care of the results, and the results will take care of the feelings. So we're going to go on to the last one, which is connection, right? Practicing connection is also an actionable, it's also an action, right? Practicing connection is how we cultivate worthiness as well, right? Because we got to feel connected in our life, and the only way to feel connected in our life is when we reach out and connect to people. The problem comes when we start thinking that there's something wrong with us, and we tend to pull. When that happens, we tend to pull away from the relationship that we have, right? And this isolation of yourself make that feeling of unworthiness even worse. Okay, write this down. Practicing connection allows you to know that you're not alone, right, in your own pain or your own struggles. It reminds you that you're still worthy of love even when you're making mistakes, even when you're struggling. And that is why if you want to practice connection by connecting with people who are supportive of you, right? Supportive to help you get in touch with that sense of self-worth. According to the author, right, he defined connection as an energy between people, when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and they derive strength from the relationship. So let's go a bit deeper on that. So if connection is an energy, right, that's search between people, right, we must remember it must travel both directions. So my question to you is, right, have you derived self-worth from never needing help but always offering it? I mean, have you derived self-worth from never needing help but always offering it? Have you placed value on being a helper, always happy to help others but never willing to call anyone for help? Or on the other hand of the spectrum is this: you do not ask for help because you fear that you're unable to help or not willing to help in the future. If you have, then you probably fall under this category of individualism or self-sufficiency, right? Where you have this notion or this idea that you don't need anyone, right? End up you do everything yourself, figure things out all by yourself. So I want you to realize one thing. Do you notice that many of us are willing to extend a helping hand, but we are reluctant to reach out for help whenever we need it ourselves? Because in the last book review that I did, I talked about this, right? It's because you are keeping scores, right? In the book Never Eat Alone, I talk about this principle, right? Stop keeping scores, right? Because once you realize that, a connection, a relationship can only function when they recognize that it's a mutual need. So I just want to cover this again so that you guys can remember, right? Relationship gets stronger the more we use them, right? It means that whenever you ask for help or whenever you offer help, you have given that person an opportunity to strengthen the relationship. The truth is, right, by not asking for help, by not offering help, you already create a distance between people, and there's no opportunity to strengthen this relationship. Make sense? So until you can receive, the author also said something similar to the previous book review is this, right? Until we can receive with an open heart, which means no judgment, right? We are never really giving with an open heart. So if we really want to be able to receive freely, we need to give without judgment. Next thing, right, that I want to talk about is that, how do you assess your worthiness? The author says, right, the only way to assess your worthiness is when you can let go what other people think about you. Okay, so what does this mean? Okay, this is something right now. If you let people's perception of you dictates your behavior, you will never feel that you are enough. Okay, do I need to repeat? Someone help me to type in the chat, okay? If you let people's perception of you dictates your behavior, you never feel that you are enough, because you cannot control someone else's perception, and people's perception change all the time. If you can, on the other hand, if you can let yourself own your identity, you can choose your own identity, right? Despite what other people think, then you can define your own worthiness. If you can let yourself choose your identity, your own identity, despite what other people think, that's how you define your worthiness. The point I want to make is this, right? The world responds to how you choose to see yourself first, right? Before you can, become a person of influence, you need to first see yourself as a person of influence. If you see yourself as a nobody, right, people are going to treat you as a nobody. The author also says this, right? When we struggle to believe in our worthiness, right, we start hustling for it. We start to hustle for it, right? By pleasing, by perfecting, by proving. That's why you see a lot of people say, I want to prove to my parents, I want to prove to my teacher, I want to prove to whoever, right? And I want you to write this down. Whatever you want from someone else, give it to yourself first. Okay, I repeat again. Whatever you want from someone else, give it to yourself first. If you want compliment, right? You want compliment from someone else, give it to yourself first. If you want validation from someone else, give it to yourself first. Because no matter how many of them give you, right, if you never give yourself first, you will never be enough. So that's something that you need to practice, right? Whatever you want from someone else, give yourself first. Give yourself that compliment, give yourself that validation, give yourself that encouragement, right? And you'll see yourself feeling that you are less dependent on other people's perception of you. So we're going to move on, right? This is one of the biggest challenge for many people, right? Which is believing that we are worthy now. Right? A lot of people postpone your worthiness, right? Write this down, right? Worthiness doesn't have prerequisites. So many of us, knowingly or unknowingly, right, created a long list of worthiness prerequisites. right? I will be worthy when I achieve my round table. Then I will approach my uncle, right? I'm worthy, etc., etc., etc. If you struggle to own that identity of yours, that enoughness, right? You need to first know, what does I am enough means to you? Can I ask you this question? What does I am enough means to you?